Hello and welcome to Pandooradom. I am your host, Miles Grejgh.
And I'm the co-host, Paul Cradle. Welcome, Pandoranauts, to the show. And
Welcome.
today is, let me see if I can get the date right. Today is September 23rd, 2024, a Monday. My time is about 7:36 p.m. and Miles' time, I believe, is about 2:36 p.m. Is that correct, Miles?
Yes, that's exactly
All right.
according to my clock. Yeah.
So, what I this is the main thought that's on my mind right now, Miles, is that in general, broad terms, I'll start by saying that I think my whole life has been characterized mostly, well, not my whole life, but most of my professional life and a lot of my social life has been characterized by the push to just be more of an extrovert. And it's raining here. Can you hear the rain?
I'm afraid not, but
Okay,
I
good.
take your
That's
word.
good. That's good, Miles. So I have the volume turned up so I can hear you because it's on the tin roof. But what I wanted to say is, Miles, especially in regards to the place that I'll call Patty Cakes, where we both spent time working, or so-called working in my case, in the early 2010s. It was, see, for me, it's a shame because I'm looking back, I'm pretty sure that the whole thing from beginning to end was much more of a sales job than I initially thought it was, and more than I was ever really comfortable with it being. And we all know that sales naturally comes with a lot of extroversion baked right in. But I won't stop there. I'll also say that I believe there was racial stereotyping involved where they have a certain characterized picture, or that's what a stereotype is, of the white man when he came to China, that he was going to act a certain way and have at least a certain level of extroversion. So I think that the Chinese actually had the extrovert ideal with regards to white men even more than white men themselves have in America. And we and the shame of it is, I'll hand it back to you in a second, Miles, but the shame of it was that I think I became so obsessed and so bewildered by the idea that I had to be more extroverted to make it as an English teacher in China, that there actually were, it was almost like I started to practice malicious compliance. Like, hey, you want extroversion? I'll give you some extroversion, B. And it never worked anyway because
Yeah.
I can't do it anyway. And the saddest part of it was that looking back, I see that there definitely were times where I could have actually taught English to a willing student, but I had screwed myself up and become so disappointed and so dissatisfied by having to act more extroverted that when an opportunity came along to actually teach someone English, and I could have got a foothold and could have started working my way into more success there, I didn't take it because I was so screwed up with the need to be more extroverted. And that's where I think that's what I think is the one of the sad things about being an introvert who gets screwed up in the idea of having to be more extroverted, because it's never done. You never can. And there's no prize at the end, I've found. I never when I ever finally satisfied the obligation and it was like, okay, you're not quiet. It was like that's all it was. There was no prize, no basket of goodies and prizes at the end where it was like, woohoo, he's not quiet anymore. Let's give him the world, Johnny. It was just more like, okay, he's not quiet. Now what? I didn't get anything, and that's and so all the work that I ever put in to just talking and talking and trying to talk more and be more boisterous, well, it never got me anything anyway. But it's like that was the I got this idea that I had to do that first, and then the world would follow. Whereas there were opportunities that I, as an extrovert, as an introvert, could have just taken hold of, and I actually could have taught somebody English. And I just, it passed me up. Back to you, Miles.
Right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Paul, and telling us a little bit about your experience in China as an English teacher and otherwise. Now, this, of course, is how you and I met
Yes.
originally at the very school that we're talking about at the moment. It's a private school, which, to my understanding, doesn't even exist anymore. It
Hmm.
that's what I heard. What, didn't hear that?
Patty Cakes is out of business. Was I the one who told you that?
That's what I heard.
Did you hear it from me though? Because
I don't
I knew of
know.
one
Not, I
location.
may have heard
I knew of
from
one
another
location.
contact.
Oh, you have heard of it from another context. Okay.
I may have. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm not
Surprising.
certain who it may. What's that?
That's surprising because whenever I
I
work
heard
at
that
a
they
place,
closed it down.
they seem infallible to me as the employer at the time. So it's always surprising to hear that an employer
You mean like
here I was just little me
wait, you,
having to
wait,
work.
you mean indestructible?
Yeah, indestructible is what I mean, right? Infallible too.
Yeah, okay.
It were
Right. Okay, good.
indestructible due to their infallibility as the employer who you need a job from. It's always surprising.
I see. Yeah, well, yeah, they had that. I mean, that's the culture. That's what I was talking about in the last episode, actually, Paul, with regard to submissive, integration into hierarchy in East Asia, like, and how steep the hierarchy is. What did I call it? Uh,
Introverted,
submissive introversion, or
submit,
introverted submission,
submit,
subservience, rather. Yes,
serving.
introverted subservience.
Mm,
And that has to do with what you're calling infallibility.
hmm.
Now, I will say my background is Jewish. Uh, I'm probably a mixture of what's called Ashkenazi and Sfaradi or Sephardic, although traceably it's only Ashkenazic. In any case, I mean, currently, uh, but in any case, there was one point in the previous generation and really all generations prior, Jews were considered to be, quote, exotic, or and they were essentially non-white, and there was no question, absolutely not integrated into that sphere. And now that it's no longer in vogue to be white, Jews are called white. So basically,
Oh,
whatever is whatever is sort of not in vogue, or is in fact even possibly denigrating language, that is really what the Jews are called in any given era. So that's real. So people sometimes will say, based on the color of one's skin, you are this or that, but ultimately, it has a lot more to do with genetics and ethnic background than actual skin tone. Uh, if we're going to talk about background, but at the end of the day, it's it's a lot of it is almost all of it is pseudoscience, and that which doesn't even pass itself off as science is really just cultural commentary, which is highly subjective. There is some level of more or less objective anthropology involved with people who are serious scholars of race, or ethnicity, of tribe, and so forth. But the grand majority of pundits and commentators that you find online and in the streets really have no idea what the heck they're talking about. I mean, there's a high level of ignorance and people believing that they're experts when they have real no credentials. And unfortunately, even people who do have the credentials are often so infected or contaminated by their own pet theories and cognitive dissonance that while they may be experts more or less within their field,
Wait,
they're
let me
so
stop you. Experts,
they're so
what kind of experts are you talking about? Experts on what?
in any given field. But in this case, it could be some an expert in anthropology or an expert in in race theory, which I don't even know if that's possible. But let's say you have such a person. The problem is that in many cases you have even scientists in STEM subjects. They may be experts or considered experts in their field, but because they have pet theories that are really pet theories, they're not always reliable to tell you the full gamut of the situation in their field. So what I'm saying is that if you if you meet somebody who is considered to be or passes themselves off as an expert in say anthropology, you can say, okay, great. Problem is this anthropologist who may be well versed, may have a PhD, has written a thesis, a dissertation, many papers published. At the end of the day, their pet theory may be that they support, some version of, Sapir-Whorf theory, where it has to do with what we were talking about in the last episode, which is the relationship between language and perception. So they may believe on which is sort of what is it, the extremist vision or version of this would be that you say, okay, well, perception is absolutely 100% determined or even predetermined by language. Most mainstream linguists do not believe this at this point, but you might have an expert in the field who, or I should say, an expert otherwise, but who has this pet theory. And so they're completely possessed by
Hmm.
this one theory. So they may be an expert in their field, more or less. I mean, that's how they're considered. That is to say, they have all the credentials. But my point is that even if you have all the credentials, doesn't mean that you are not contaminated by your own pet theories or theory. And it's very common, actually, unfortunately. So that's I just said that it could also be people who even do have credentials, and that's the what's responsible for this aside. I wanted to make clear what I was talking about.
Hmm.
Now, so back to me. So I'm
So how was your experience at Patty Cakes?
well. So this is the thing. As I said, I'm Jewish, and I at the time I had a big beard.
Yeah, very religious.
Very,
Very.
you remember that, yes. And the kids I mean, they had heard of Jews before in that part of China, but the only thing they really knew from my conversations with them in Mandarin was they knew that Jews were number one, rich, which of course is a stereotype.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the second thing they knew was Albert Einstein. So these were the two things that they knew about Jews
Uh,
in the general population at the time in
money
that
and brains.
town.
Money and brains. But
And so
it's not just Einstein. Did they also associate Ashkenazi's Jews with high IQ? Or was that
well,
connected?
they don't know what they don't know what Ashkenazi even means. I'm
Oh,
sure,
Jews in general.
or they don't know the word. But in any case, that those were the two elements that they seemed to know, as far as I could tell from conversations I had with them, because I asked them.
You
But
know,
they called me à la Buren, à la Buren. Excuse my accent. I mean, I forgot how to. the tones on that particular word.
You know
But
what?
they were calling me an Arab,
But you're not
and
Arab.
I said
Just
no, I'm not.
just
I'm
a second.
actually I'm related, but I'm not an Arab.
Just a
And
second.
I say related because
As much as you may have disliked that
technically
kind
we
of
are.
as much as you may have disliked that kind of eccentricity, I think in my case, it would have helped my survival there to have some kind of ethnic eccentricity or a beard or something. It would have actually
Oh
helped
no, but
because I
I
was
didn't dislike it though. I didn't
yeah,
dislike it at
yeah,
all.
I don't think I would have either. I think it would because I think it actually worked for you. And I think it would have worked for me too if I had kind of an out, but I was such a
Well, let me
vanilla white man that the only thing they wanted or expected from me initially was just we want to see the extroversion. But if I had had a beard, if I were like strictly Catholic and made it known or something, something like that, it would have worked for me.
well, let,
I think some of the
oh well
yeah, go ahead.
let me let me interject, Paul. I apologize for interrupting, but it makes me think of a really important aspect of teaching at patty cakes as we're calling it. That's not the actual name, by the way, guys. This
Of
is
course.
just what we're calling it. Can we say the name? If it's out of business, we can say the name.
I think we better
I
not
guess
for libel and stuff.
better not. All
Yeah.
right, so we're calling it patty cakes. So it's not actually called patty cakes, but it's pretty close. Not the name of the school that is. And we were teaching there around 2010, and this was in China. We won't disclose. I mean, you'll figure out the name of the city at some point in the course of our shows, but we won't say it right now.
We can't say
So
why not the city? City's safe, isn't it?
because if we say pat of cakes and then the city, everybody will they can trace it. Not that it matters really. I don't
Oh,
think that there's really
well, that's still
uh
if they can trace it, that doesn't save you from libel. If you're sure they can trace it, you might as well say it.
yeah, but I don't think we're saying anything libelous. Well,
Okay.
we might get into that, but
All right. All right. Anyway,
but I
on to
but
business.
I so what well yeah, so what I wanted to say was that it was part of the show and it actually worked to my benefit in the end. So even I don't have any problem being called an Arab because number one, I kind of did look like a bit Arab, stereotypically. On the other hand, Jews and Arabs are related genetically too. Most genetic tests will show that even Ashkenazic Jews are majoritarily Levantine, especially in paternal markers. So and of course, Levantine greater spectrum that includes other Middle Eastern peoples. So that's the interesting thing. I mean, there are a lot of people many anti-Semites and so forth, who challenge that with no ground to stand on. Really, it's a common misconception that Jews are European imposters, and so this sort of thing. But these are pretty much debunked conspiracy theories. In any case, the idea is that I was happy enough to be called an Arab in the absence of their knowledge that I was a Jew, in fact. In a way, I thought close enough.
Oh,
And I'm a big fan of classical Arabic literature, which I read in the original along with Hebrew, and I even write poems in Arabic, in classical Arabic, that is. So, along with Hebrew, I mean, I mostly write in Hebrew and English, but I do write sometimes in Arabic, Maltese, etc. So, now the thing is it helped the show
yeah.
because I would go into the class and the students, the well, some of the students already knew me by reputation, and they would say, "Oh yeah, it's Ali Kus, Ali Kus," and they would say, some of them called me, what was it, Ali Kus, yeah, with with Grandpa Alex. Again, I'm messing up the tones because I can't remember the tones for that word. Some of these words. The thing is, I speak Chinese with my children here in the Levant,
Oh wow.
but that's only the Chinese for the words that I can remember the tones for. I mean, some of the I know the tones for for dog. I'm pretty sure I remember is go, so it's go, and then
Oh,
da falling tones. The thing is, those words I can say with a certain level of confidence that so I will use words like that, but like yeah. I can't remember the tones for that's grandpa. But it's like I think it's
Oh, yeah,
father's side grandpa.
yeah, yeah.
Give me a second. Yeah, I can. I mean,
Uh,
I actually checked it recently, but then I forgot again. Hold on
another
a second. I'm turning on my battery for my phone because it's uh. Here we go.
well,
There we go.
that's really interesting to me, though, Miles, that you think it helped you because I
Well,
think
let
the
let
one
me explain why though.
that would have helped me is if I helped saved me from just having to constantly be more extroverted was some kind of guns to stick to something. I don't know if I could have
Well, that,
could have been visibly a staunch Catholic or something just to say I am different, so don't treat me like the plain vanilla white guys and expect
well,
me to be
and this is the this is the very thing, Paul. Though, because the reason why it helped the show go on, as it were, is that I would show up to class. The students would either call me Grandpa Alex because of the big beard, or they would call me Alabujan, like you Arab. And I would say, okay, no problem. But like I said, I said close enough. and
like.
and you know, I used it to my advantage because what they expected was is that this guy is actually from the Middle East. Again, close enough. But they thought like, okay, this guy's from the Gulf.
Mm,
Um, and which is kind of absurd because I mean, if you look at me now, you can't really see it. But when I had the beard, I can kind of understand why they might have been mistaken. Uh, Although I get all kinds of strange things. I mean, I've been called Italian, Greek, even one time Pakistani, which is bizarre. This guy spoke to me in Urdu in America. I walked into this convenience store and this guy started speaking to me in Urdu, and I didn't understand any Urdu at the time,
man,
and I
I
do
wish
know.
I'd had some
Well,
kind of
well,
guns to stick to like you
well
did.
let me finish this. So then I go in and then I didn't respond. I responded in English. I'm sorry, I don't speak Urdu, but I understood it was Urdu. And then he goes like this: "It is not good to throw away your own heritage."
Yeah, well, that's
And I
true.
was like, I was like, no, no, I'm not from Pakistan. He's like, no, this is not good. You must speak your heritage. And I was like, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Like he was convinced somehow that I was Pakistani, which is really bizarre. I don't look Desi or Pakistani at all, as far as I can tell. But I don't know. That was an interest. Maybe it was just the lighting. Who knows? But in a way, I take it as a compliment. I'm also a big fan of Urdu literature, but that's another discussion. So, and that's the thing. Israeli Jew who likes Urdu. This is a Urdu literature. Well, yeah. So what I will say is that I show up to these classes. These students call me all manner of different words. They are convinced that I am from the Gulf. That is to say, the Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Bahrain or wherever, and they go, what did so they assume that I don't know English terribly well, or at least that I'm going to have a
My
really
gosh.
noticeable foreign accent. And so this
Wow.
guy's not going to be suitable because you remember in China they wanted people who were native English speakers from America, first off America or England, depending on the school. But you could also be from Canada, and it kind of went down in the hierarchy. It's like then there's
Yeah.
Canada, then there's Australia and New Zealand, and then there's South Africa,
Yeah.
and then there's some of the other African countries like Guyana, not Guyana, so that's South America, Ghana, sorry, yeah, Ghana, Nigeria, which all have their own nativized English variants at this point. But obviously, unfortunately, in China at the time, and I'm sure it's still the case, those were considered to be lower prestige variants of English than American English, standard American English. So they just assumed, okay, this guy doesn't know native English. He's going to have a thick accent. He's not in a position to be teaching us what our parents are paying for. And these were rich
Nice,
kids.
nice. So then you
And
had the
then,
advantage of the pleasant surprise. You
well,
did.
exactly that. And it wasn't, that's exactly it. So they were completely convinced. They were eyeballing me like, okay, this guy's an imposter. Not to say, I mean, there are plenty
Oh,
of
okay,
people from the
okay.
Gulf who speak excellent English, but
Uh,
but I know they
oh,
were expecting at least.
okay,
And
so
then they
it's
go,
yeah,
and they said, "This is so Paul." Then they go, "There's no way." And I told them in Chinese before they'd actually really heard my English.
yeah.
I told them in Mandarin and then also in Dongbehua, the local dialect. I told them, "Oh no, I just gave it away. Maybe now they can round down if where it is." Anyway, whatever. The point is that they so I told them no that I'm originally from the United States, and they were like, "Yeah, right." And I said, "No, really. I mean, I have a religious reason for having a big beard,
Uh,
and it's not just for no reason. Like it's an actual." And they said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm sure, really, whatever." I mean, obviously they don't talk like that way in China, but it's like the something. In any case, they didn't believe me. They don't have that kind of
uh,
sarcasm that we have in them. But
yeah.
what they did do is they then were completely shocked in a way that's bizarre to me because in a way it's like Americans are so jaded or they're so filled with information, so exposed to so many different things that they can't even get that level of naive surprise that's possible in China. In China, there's
Oh,
such a gap in what people are exposed to in terms of like what I don't know, like higher pop culture other than that, which is, you know, it is sort of given out by the state. It's actually very easy to actually shock them culturally.
mm,
Uh, it's complete naive surprise, just like complete shock. And so I then spoke to them in the kind of English that I'm speaking now, but even more properly enunciated and I spoke like a teacher, and they,
let's see.
their jaws were like down to the floor, like in a cartoon,
I understand.
and
See,
they were completely,
this
they were like,
full
"What? This isn't
independence.
possible."
Yeah. So Miles,
Yeah.
you're kind of enlightening me.
So
Some
my
enlightening.
point is that shocked them into respect. That's
Yeah.
my point. It shocked them
Okay. See,
into sudden
that's
into sudden acolytes. They became followers, and I became the head teacher in that school of a
I
kind
see. I see.
after a fashion because of that. It that not
See,
that
Miles.
nonsense.
Miles, I'm glad you're saying this, and it's enlightening me in a kind of a comforting way because I see that there were background reasons initially to reasonably expect different outcomes between you and myself. And I see that I wish that, like you, I had had some kind of guns to stick to where I wasn't just expected to be a plain, tall, talkative, loud, boisterous white man, and that's it. And because that's all I could really be. And like I said, I do wish that yeah, like I'd had more guns to stick to. But I will also admit that I think a lot of it, naturally, that we're often unaware of at the time, a lot of it did have to do with my reaction to it. I think if maybe I had chosen to just simply ignore all requests to be, or almost entirely ignore all requests to be louder, more boisterous, more extroverted, happier, and just Mr. White Man. If I had ignored that and just concentrated on having something to actually teach and more of the sense of here, do this. if I had given that to myself, because Patty Cakes never gave us anything in the form of here, teach this. There was never. I mean, there was something that they said that we were kind of supposed to use a certain
Yeah, they
kind of
gave us some
worksheet thing.
loose cheap, but
Yeah,
barely,
but we
barely.
never really were supposed to. I mean, it was kind of like it was
I
there
didn't
to
ever
disobey. It was
even
like,
use them once. I didn't even use
yeah,
them once.
maybe
Not even
we
once.
couldn't
I
even
rejected
really.
them. I said, I'm not teaching. I'm not
Yeah,
teaching because it was so useless.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay. So
and
maybe that was the
I
point.
already knew how to teach by that point. I
See,
was like, I'm not gonna use these
because
people's teaching
but
materials.
but you see, Miles, Patty Cakes was so calculating. You kind of have to wonder is if they gave you materials that were kind of unusable. Maybe that was the point, so that the student would look at the unusable material and the teacher's attempt to teach it, be and then think, oh, this teacher himself by his own energy is so much better than the academic content that I like him and I want to go to his lesson again. And see,
That's an I don't know if there was that level of business acumen behind that decision,
maybe not,
but it's possible. I mean,
but they
because
certainly didn't
that's
see a
already
problem with it.
that's already that's like kind of philosophical. You'd have to have like a philosophy graduate working in the think tank in the back office
Yeah,
for something
but
like that.
the thing
But
is, they obviously didn't have a problem with people going off of it, which they could have, and they didn't. So I mean that they just acquiesced that.
well, yeah, I do
So,
recall. I do recall most. I would say a lot of our coworkers were dependent on those sheets of paper, and I remember looking in or
they were.
hearing in other people's classes, and they were just going, line by line, really. And what I found is a lot of the teachers they were able to succeed
Hmm.
by simply looking a particular way, that is to say, having a particular race,
Yeah.
or well, this is the thing. If you were Caucasian, they expected you to be the stereotype of a Caucasian, like Larry Bird. Like you had to be this like tall, wan,
Yeah,
kind of like naive,
that's an
goofy
interesting
white
point,
guy. And
Miles. I
it was
I
like,
do
"Hello,
wonder.
guys, welcome to the show." And then, but then if you were African American, even though most of the guys who were claiming they were African American were actually African, but they would essentially adopt their version of accents. Because I remember a lot of these guys were from Nigeria,
Mhm.
Cameroon, etc. And I remember some of them had really noticeable African West African accents, and they would go, "Yeah, I'm from LA." And I mean, obviously, to
Yeah.
us, like we can hear that you're not from LA, most likely. It's like, yeah, I own the LA Lakers. I own the LA Lakers. So why are you teaching English in China? So, so
You mean he
there was a
probably
guy
meant
who
he
actually
owned
said
a
that.
share, he owned a share in the company that owned them, maybe. Anyway, what I
Right.
mean, but Miles,
So
I
wait,
did
wait, can I
wonder
just say?
how
I,
much
I just
being.
wanted to say quick. So
Mhm.
what they wanted these guys though, so if you were African American, or you were at least you passed yourself off as an African American, they uh they expected you to be the archetype of a not merely the stereotype, the archetype of of a rapper, of a hip hop artist. This is so you had to come in with bling bling, with golden teeth even. I mean, you had to have your hat backwards and be like, yo, what's I mean, these guys, and
See,
that's how they made
Miles,
bank. That's how they made money.
but see, Miles,
It was amazing.
I think I was obviously suffering from some kind of mild depression at the time, which made
I
me
was suffering from Miles depression.
some kind of mild depression at the time, which made me not able to do all of that stuff that you're talking about, the bling and I mean, man, this
Well,
was
you couldn't have you could well, you would have been like in another category though, because you're not African American. If you came in with
oh,
bling, you would have been already a different phenomenon. Like you had to be African
but
American to pass that off.
but it does cross
That
my
particular
mind now for something as seemingly non-height related as teaching English. It does kind of make me wonder if you were a shorter guy, did you have to make up for it somehow, even in teaching English?
Oh
I
yeah,
think you
absolutely. It was
did. You
completely
had,
compensatory.
even in
It's
teaching
a,
English,
is that
you
right?
teaching your
Is that
language, where a
not
short guy
compens?
can
Sorry,
talk, short guy can talk just as much
not,
as a tall guy. But even for teacher selection, if you weren't tall to teach language, you had to make up for
well,
it. Somehow.
you absolutely
make
had to make
up
up
for
for it. I
not
mean, that's the thing.
make up
Well,
for not
but
being tall.
but I'll tell you that's
Why?
what drove me too, because I'm not the tallest guy in the universe, especially compared to these guys from West Africa who were like a foot or two taller than I was,
Yeah,
and 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 plus they were clean shaven, and I had this big beard, which was bizarre
I
in period China.
see. I even
And
did
well, hold
something.
on. But in their eyes, I mean, I was probably not much shorter than the average Chinese fellow, but compared to their vision of what foreigners are or are meant to be, I was pretty short. I'm 5'7". I'm about 5'7", and so but even at that height, which is pretty average, I think, uh, they that was another aspect, and so
So
I
in terms
absolutely
of,
had to make up for it
yeah, in terms
and
of
being more
height,
boisterous and
yeah,
more ebullient and insane. I was literally jumping up on desks. I
yeah,
was jumping up and down on desks. I was doing somersaults on the floor.
I know that would have helped.
I was
Yeah,
doing like
that would have
Michael
helped.
Jackson style dancing across like before the blackboard, and
Yeah. So
it
in
was
terms of the
absurd.
stereotypical things that they required of Americans is that you be tall, boisterous, loud, and extremely extroverted. Extroverted. I did not measure up
Not
in
just
any of those
Americans, foreign
aspects.
teachers in general.
And
Yeah,
just seeming intelligent would not make up for it because stupid people can talk
absolutely not.
pretty
It wasn't
just as
enough. You
what?
had to have that charisma. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not about intelligence at all. Like, you absolutely have to have
no,
that care about quality. They didn't care about quality.
no,
They
no.
cared
Patty cakes.
about the show, which is well, a lot of the schools were that way. I mean, I'm sure there are schools that care about quality, or there were, but there were many that yeah, they were concerned about making money. I mean, and that makes sense. But the level at which they were willing to sacrifice quality for the show was shocking to me
Less than a minute
as
left.
somebody who
Less than a minute. But
yeah,
yeah, we can
though I
continue
was
this
well
another
traveled,
time.
I've seen much of the world where money is king. Well, I mean, America money is king too, but in a way,
Let's see. Despite
there is a
all of this,
higher
Miles,
loyalty, fidelity
despite
to
all of this,
quality in some.
see, despite all of this, I would have been better off if I ignored it and just taught. But